All my life, I've been working very hard to fit in. I dread the question, where are you from? No, where are you really from? How do I even begin to answer that in a 3-second soundbite? Is home where I live, where I was born, or where I grew up and formed an identity? I was born in a world that doesn't exist anymore. The Soviet Union is now a cliched prop used in American action movies. Israel was my home during my most formative years, but I'm not exactly Jewish. My Russian mother left my Ukrainian father and later married my stepfather, a Jew. I used to speak Ukrainian, but now if I go to Ukraine, I would be treated as a foreigner. I live in Toronto, a city of many misfits like me, trying to figure out who they are. I didn't want to come to Canada, at least not the first time. After 11 years in Israel, I saw my life and future there. I was in my early 20s, completing my mandatory military service and thinking about university when my parents told me about their plans. I think it didn't sink in until I was on the plane. We arrived in Hamilton, Ontario, in the middle of August, and for the weeks that follow, I feel completely lost. Once again, I'm an immigrant without the Canadian experience required to even get a job at Tim Hortons. I've tried all my life to blend into who I thought I needed to be, a chameleon. But to blend into what? What did it mean to be a Canadian? I can't understand why my parents brought us here, why they thought here would be better. I feel deflated, like the wind has been sucked out of my soul. I don't have it in me to go through this again, in a new country. So I make my first independent choice, to go home, the last place where I knew who I was. I didn't choose to move to Israel. Well, not the first time. I was 10, just finishing the 3rd grade at the Ukrainian musical school when the books and furniture in our apartment started to disappear. My parents, I wasn't terribly upset about not being able to practice my piano, that's true. My parents told me everything was being shipped to our new home. Like a disciplined Soviet girl, I didn't ask any questions. The first time I cried realizing we were really leaving was when the train was pulling out of the station and I watched the streets of my city being left behind. I wondered if I would ever see my friends again, knowing I probably wouldn't, and I never did. What I was leaving behind was a life and a world that now only exist in memories, old photographs and stories our Russian-Ukrainian parents would tell around the table. We arrived in Bucharest a few months after the Ceausescu revolution swept through Romania. Communism has collapsed everywhere in Europe. The bullet holes in the government buildings give the city an eerie air of desertion, but we don't talk about it too much. For us, this is only a temporary stop on our way to our final destination. In the morning, we board the plane to Tel Aviv with dozens of other ex-Soviets hoping for a better life. The first time I remember feeling different in Israel was the day my parents brought me to register in elementary school. We had just arrived in our new neighborhood, and it felt like the whole school came down to see the Russian girl. I was mortified. Everyone else wore shorts and t-shirts, sort of a local uniform. And there I was, doe-eyed, in a flower dress that screamed foreign. Now, I don't know if you've seen those photographs of Eastern European girls in their dresses. That's real. that was me. I knew only a few sentences in Hebrew, but 2 words would come to define my life in the following years. Ola chadasha. כשהשמש עולה, la la la, עולה חדשה, la la la. That's what the neighborhood kids would sing as I passed by. Sorry. Taunting me to get a rise out of me. Clearly they succeeded. I'm still getting emotional. The words literally mean a new ascendant. That literalness is kind of poetic and beautiful when I think of it now. But back then, it was the dark song that announced my difference. We were one of the few recent immigrant families in our neighborhood, and I felt like I was under a magnifying glass all the time, a target of intrusive questions and unwanted attention. And as a shy, introverted 10-year-old, I just wanted to be left alone, to blend in. I don't know when the shame started to build up, but it grew to encompass my being an immigrant or not being a native Israeli, my roots, my culture, my parents, and their heavy Russian accents, us not having money. I put all of my energy toward immersing into the local culture, which wasn't too difficult in a place that practically demanded that of you. By the age of 13, you couldn't detect a shred of accent in my voice. I got the highest marks in Torah and Hebrew grammar and Zionist history. I was seamlessly stitched into the fabric of Israeli culture. The only thing that gave me away was my name, Ola Garatskoy. So when it was time to go to high school, I became Ilaneet Goren. Hebraizing one's name was actually a very common practice among Jewish newcomers. And even though my parents accepted my choice, I've always wondered if they felt like I was trying to distance myself from them. I remember the first day of high school when the teacher read the class attendance list out loud. I was just another student, not distinct, not unique, not other. Little did I know that I would still end up being the girl with the weird name. Ilaneet? What kind of name is this? After I decided to return home to leave Canada, I returned to Israel and lived with my grandparents for 9 months and worked to save money. But something already feels different. I'm already someone who has left this country, though I haven't yet accepted another as a home. I feel lost again. Is my future still in Israel, where the culture is familiar, where I have job prospects and friends, but no close family? Will my newborn sister know who I am, or will I lose that connection if I'm not part of her life in Canada? I packed my suitcases again. This time, I choose to do everything it takes to make it work in Canada, even if I have to start all over again. I enroll in English classes, job finding classes, and apply for university. When I get into Ryerson, I move to Toronto with my girlfriend. Yes, in the process of establishing my new life, I fall in love with a woman and add gay to my ever-evolving identity. A door to a whole new community has opened up to me. This year, I'm marking my 15th year in Canada. I now have a career dedicated to championing the most different among us. I realized that I can still feel a sense of belonging while maintaining the identity that I choose for myself. I now don't just want to be accepted for my differences. I want to be celebrated for them. But more than anything, I want to feel connected to people around me based on our common, complicated, messy humanity. So now, when someone asks, where are you from? Ilaneet, what culture is that? What nationality is that? I might pause for a moment and say, there are many layers to that question. I'd love to tell you my story one time. Thank you.